We're talking legal essentials for business success. Protect your IP and brand. We get some expert tips from Progressive Legal. Because thought leaders, if you are not protecting your intellectual property in today's AI-driven world, well, you're leaving yourself vulnerable. This is truly an essential episode of Biz Bites for thought leaders. We're going to look at the legal foundations that every business owner needs to know. Ian Aldridge is the founder of Progressive Legal, and he shares some critical insights on safeguarding your business ideas, protecting your brand, and avoiding those costly legal mistakes. With over 4,000 businesses served, Ian can reveal why 75% of businesses, and that is a shocking number, are leaving themselves exposed to unnecessary risk. So get ready for some practical, no-nonsense advice on protecting your business assets and intellectual property in an age where ideas can be copied at the click of a button. Stay tuned for this very important episode of Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. And today we are going to explore all things legal. And whilst that may turn a few people off, please don't shut down, because it's a really important thing for small business. And I think it's something that is often neglected by many people until it is too late in the piece. So I thought I'd bring Ian along from Progressive Legal to give us a little bit of an insight today. So Ian, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Ian, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of an introduction as to who you are and what the firm is about?
Yeah, thanks. I started the firm 10 years ago now. We've helped over 4,000 businesses now that I can count. We do business law, so back to front for small business, corporate and structuring, intellectual property protection, commercial agreements and advice, workplace, privacy, and dispute resolution across all those areas. So basically, for small business, for growing small businesses, not much we can't do. And I've designed the firm around what small businesses need, as opposed to just doing one particular siloed area niche. But we've got experts in each of those particular areas to try and make sure that it's, as much as we can, a one-stop shop for businesses. We don't do property or tax or criminal law or conveyancing or wills, probate, etc. We sort of like to across those areas. There's enough for us to keep on top of, but we're amassing a bit of a powerful network of other law firms to refer clients to as well. So it's not just sort of a dead end when they come to us for other services. 10 years prior to setting up my own firm, I've worked for small, medium, large, mega firms and in-house and banks. I found inevitably the bigger the building, the worse the job, and the worse the people. And while I started out my career in for small a suburban practice, I found that even though it wasn't the most financially rewarding, it was definitely the most rewarding intrinsically, happiness wise, and helping mums and dads or small businesses that are helping others and not working for soulless corporations where you don't see really the output of the advice, and you don't you don't get to really interact a lot with the people and see how that advice is actually implemented into a business and how much that can affect someone's daily life or the lives of the people within the organisation. So I've sort of come full circle in that way. Come back and started helping small business when I came back from London. I had a couple of years stint there on what's very common for Australians to do, the 2 years in London, and then when I came back to Australia, I decided to set up my own firm.
And it's a big thing. I mean, I think that's the interesting perspective here. There's lots to delve into, but in essence, you're a small business yourself, and so you're actually going through all of those pains that a small business operator finds. I think you've just gone past 10 years now in business. And so you understand all of those pains that a small business operator goes through, because that's what you've been doing as well as servicing clients.
Yeah, as we've grown as well too, we've noticed our clients growing with us. So it's really nice to see. Nice to see that we've had some clients that have been with us from still with us from year one, and it's lovely to see them grow through their growth as well as see our growth, and we're enjoying that partnership in a way. It really does make a big difference, and from, as I said, like an intrinsic perspective, it's really nice to see clients succeed and win awards and get funding, or employ the next round of staff, secure their trademarks both locally and internationally, secure big supply and distribution agreements, and and obviously fend off any challenges that happen along the way, and know that they've got someone that's going to be in their corner to back them and fend off any outside threats, which it's just a par for course for business.
It is, isn't it? And I think in this day and age, it's there's kind of this battle, isn't there, in business at the moment, where there's this battle to be ahead and to be different, but also being aware that with the technology that's out there, that anything's being put out there is almost being grabbed and being creating a new staple for other people as well. So it's an evolving space, and one that I think small business at the moment probably doesn't focus on as much as it should.
Yeah, I think generally, I was saying to one of my colleagues yesterday, entrepreneurs are risk seekers. We are that by definition. We see the blue ocean and want us to start swimming and see what happens. But there's I sort of have tried to really encourage clients over the past 10 years to, you can take as many sort of risky activities with your marketing, your campaigns, who you're going to tackle on industries, etc., and disrupt. But there's just a few things that you just don't want to risk when it comes to business, and that's tax and finance and structuring. Making sure that that's really, really sound from a tax perspective, so you don't get bitten, with the right structure that's going to fulfill what you want to achieve in the next 5 years, so that you're not having to pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, or then having to face a large tax bill because you didn't realize that there were capital gains tax that attracted to to a transfer of assets from one type of structure to another. All these things that small businesses get caught out on all the time from a tax perspective. Insurance is obviously a big thing, and for most businesses, I think most owners would probably realise that it's a no-brainer to have some form of business insurance, general business insurance, and public liability, and other insurance. And I'm encouraging people to think the same about law. Like, it's the legal structure of the business, the legal, even just the ABCs of what you need, where you can push across a lot of legal liability onto others, but you as a business need to actually do that. The buck stops with you unless you do, and it falls back on us. Most business owners forget that whenever something comes before a court or a tribunal, a judge, a magistrate, or a tribunal member kind of looks at business like big bad business, and it doesn't really matter how big or small you are, because usually the person that's coming up against is a consumer, that is a protected species. Like a tenant's a protected species, an employee is a protected species, all for good reason. But I think most small businesses forget. When you're coming before a court, I'm not saying they see like Apple, but they do see like a business, and it's your responsibility to make sure that your terms and conditions are clear, unambiguous, nothing contradictory within them, plain English, very, very clear. And basically, if it's almost like the onus of proof just kind of reverses onto you as the business, even though it's their claim. It almost reverses onto us as a business owner to prove why that we should be successful, rather than ordinarily in any other proceedings, a plaintiff would bear the onus of proof, right? To beyond balance of probabilities in a commercial setting. So it kind of flips back on us to prove why this consumer, or why this person, this client or this customer, why we're right and they're wrong. And then only when you've ticked those boxes does then the tribunal member or the judge or the magistrate say, right, okay, well, what do you say about that? It's not the other way. So it's almost show me your terms, and we'll look at those really carefully first, and they'll be scrutinised very heavily. In particular to what they're actually claiming, and if anything is ambiguous, if anything's grey, it's going to fall against us. But there's some really great legal things to push across this legal liability: waivers, disclaimers, and terms and limitation of liability. I won't bore you with the details. That's our job. But there's some really, really clever stuff you can do to limit the amount of damage and risk management, which is pretty much all we do. Like, I'm not sugarcoating really what we do. It's really risk management, and we're trying to reduce the amount of legal risk for a business as much as we can legally, and that's as far as we can go. But yeah, we've saved many clients bacon by having really, really robust and great legal documents, and the advice that obviously goes with it, to educate the clients, to make sure that they've got the knowledge around these, and be really confident with the documents that they've got and the terms that they have. And it could be with their terms and conditions, waivers, disclaimers, their supply agreements, manufacturing any commercial agreements, and other intellectual property agreements as well, too, like non-disclosure agreements or deeds of confidentiality. So I guess the main thrust of it really is just to kind of see this as a no-brainer, and it's just a cost of doing business. Speak to your accountant, but generally speaking, these costs are tax deductible, for a business, and the knowledge that you get through this process will give you a lot of confidence in your terms and your documents to give you that power in a transaction to know what you're doing, and know who's responsible for what.
We hope you're enjoying listening to the Biz Bites podcast. Have you ever thought about having your own podcast, one for your business, where your brilliance is exposed to the rest of the world? Well, come talk to us at Podcasts Done For You. That's what we're all about. We even offer a service where I'll anchor the program for you. So all you have to do is show up for a conversation. But don't worry about that. We will do everything to design a program that suits you, from the strategy right through to publishing, and of course helping you share it. So come talk to us, podcastdoneforyou.com.au, details in the show notes below. Now back to Biz Bites.
And the knowledge that you get through this process will give you a lot of confidence in your terms and your documents to give you that power in a transaction to know what you're doing, and know who's responsible for what. I think as well too, clients and customers are becoming pretty savvy. They're reading some of these documents now. They're even throwing them into ChatGPT to give them summaries, and there's all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff going on. People are really concerned with privacy. They're starting to read privacy policies and question certain parts of them as well too. I know that's sort of starting to generally happen with, obviously, data and privacy concerns generally. People are starting to look at that and see, hey, where is this stuff going, and what organisations are you sharing this with? And they're actually they're looking at these documents now and forming it's all part of this first impression. And almost you can almost I've encouraged businesses for a little while now because it started to get a bit of feedback. I started realizing from clients, that they've actually received good feedback from the people that they've been engaging with. That these are really professional. They're starting to be judged on these documents, and you know as well as I do. Like if you get a document, given to you legally, and you can drive a bus through them, or it looks terrible, or it's you can tell it's like a American document that's pulled off a template off the web. Like you automatically start to form a view of what that business is like, almost like when you're dealing with a sole trader. I know it shouldn't be this way, but some larger organizations will only deal with corporates. Like if you're a consultant, for instance, and you're a sole trader, and they won't tell them why they didn't get the job. But even just incorporating to a company changes those optics, and then having really great legal documents, that are not, they don't need to be extraordinarily lengthy documents. They just need to be good and not have any holes in them, and and be robust, but fit for purpose. And if they are, and they don't need to negotiate various terms, then you're more likely to get the gig.
It is so important for business to be aware of it. And I think there's a couple of different levels of this. I think one is simply that most small business operators probably think, A, is it really necessary? And B, have this idea as well that, and which is steeped in some degree of truth, is that everyone's against small business. It's we've just been through an election cycle, and if there was one criticism that I heard about in relation to all parties, and so I'm not being political at all here, parties, not none of them had a policy regarding small business. And small, there were close to 400,000 small businesses that went out of business last
year. To the wall. Yeah. Record number.
And when you look at that, and you look at all of the things that are against it, this is the hard part is that often the legals are things that people avoid until they need it, which is the worst time to get to do it, and then not thinking that they can afford it. And I think that's one of the things that when you establish your firm, and what you've come up with is you've got I think you call it a legal shield that is a subscription-based model that people can get some assistance for, which is a great entry point really for business.
Yeah, we cut our teeth on startups because we were a startup at the time, and I didn't want to. I could have easily gone and set up the firm and started helping banks with their litigation matters. Like that would have been the most financially and wisest probably move. But I did it the hard way, which I often do, and backwards. And that was to help startups. And I was advised very heavily by a number of mentors and other lawyers and business owners and coaches, etc., not to do this, because that traditionally they don't have any money. Money's too tight to mention. They're bootstrapping. They don't value the advice. All this stuff all this rhetoric that I was receiving, and I was part of a group that we're all sort of helping each other through starting a business, and I guess I just didn't listen to the noise, and saw a real need to help startups and small business. Like people found out I was a lawyer and started sticking pieces of paper under my nose and saying, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I was just shocked to see what was being produced. Most of it was template driven. Being a litigation lawyer, I could drive a bus through most of the stuff I saw. Sometimes it was the advice was just plain wrong, and the clients were and the documents were just literally, print off a LexisNexis precedent, and they were just garbage precedents. Not not necessarily LexisNexis stuff, but some of these precedents that were provided they weren't fit for purpose. They weren't tailored, and which is what it's all about. You need to make sure that they're tailored for what the business is actually doing. I know it sounds like a lawyer selling his wares, but the devil really is in the detail, and I can tell you that's true. I've worked on cases where one word, and it was a 300 million euro case in London over paid versus payable, like in a contract, drafted by a very large Magic Circle firm. So like there are consequences, and this is the devil really is in the detail. And that's our bag. That's what we do. And I've seen clients come a cropper as well too, just DIYing some of this stuff. I've had a number of cases, restraint provisions where clients have DIY'd stuff, that have ended up in federal court proceedings. You name it, I've seen it. I saw a document once that it appeared American at the start, and then noticed it had French language. So it turned out to be a French Canadian document proposed to us by a Thai entity to an Australian client. And it was just garbage. It basically just scrumpled it up and threw it in the bin. Just told the client, this is the most obscure document I've ever seen that just doesn't do anything. And unfortunately, there's just such an asymmetry of information, of knowledge between client and lawyer. And as we all know, like this, there's just like there's plumbers and accountants and accountants. It's the same with lawyers. There really is a very wide left and right of arc with the quality of a lawyer that can provide you with proper and practical advice. And that's what we've been striving to create, is practical and straightforward, no BS. Just like we're talking now, business owner to business owner, and no jargon, no legalese, no Latin. Like, it's just forward thinking and practical advice that Australian businesses need. They don't need the faff. They don't need the gaff. They don't need anything else. And they need it, and they need it promptly. They're fast moving. They're very, very quick decision making. So when you operate in this startup environment, how fast it moves, how quickly the landscape changes, how the turnaround of that advice and documents needs to be fast, needs to be great quality, but it needs to be quick. It can't move like the traditional model. They all just look like snails and tortoises, compared to what they need, which is a hare, and really, really, the practical advice that goes with that. But that, you've got to have the experience to be able to provide that advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hard part, isn't it? Is you kind of alluded to it at the beginning, that the tendency is that, with a lot of businesses, they want to go to someone who will do everything. And you're very clear on the things that you do and the things that you don't do, and that you've got partners you can refer to in that. But often I think that's been the hard part for a lot of businesses, is they go to someone who just wants to do everything. So they do their best, and then ultimately you're not necessarily getting the best advice possible. And I want to explore in a moment, the areas of IP and trademarking, because I think that's particularly important to small business. But just on that note, as far as being very clear about what you do and what you handle, there's, to my view, there are too many law firms out there that purport to be servicing small business but don't really.
Yeah, I think there's I think when you do some general Google searches for those terms that for the service that you're after, you can sort of get a gist of who's out there and doing, and you can read their blogs, read their look at their 5-star reviews on Google, and we're getting a few people that are doing that now and sort of saying, I already like the way you communicate because I read this, I read that, I've looked at this on the website, I've looked at your reviews, I've watched a video on your YouTube about this, and I'm prepared, I've looked at how much you charge on fixed fee basis on your website, and I'm ready to proceed. So like they're doing that due diligence, and I encourage everyone to do that first before they choose a provider, because you really can get caught out with some firms that are trying to go after this market. And I think that first conversation, you should get a really good first impression of whether or not they've got experience in assisting small business. And I even ask, like, the lawyer that you even speak to first, ask them those questions. How many small businesses have you helped? And in my industry, how many have you helped a lot in my industry? Because every industry is different, and industry experience is a really good, it's a really good measure of how much work they've actually done. And also too, just sort of asking the lawyer that they put you in touch with first, see how much experience they've got. You can look them up on LinkedIn and see how many years they've had as a lawyer. You don't even need to ask them the question. You can look them up online and see. There's so much information that you can find out online now on various firms and the lawyers that are working on them. So you get a bit more of a background. I think coming back to your other point, in terms of the startups and businesses and the use of law firms, I think the elephant in the room is that over the last 200 years, it seems to be that law firms have done traditionally a poor job of helping of servicing small business in Australia. If it's the case, and I think, like, anecdotally, this is what we have, the research has shown for us as we've asked various businesses. I would say 3/4 of Australian small business would have an accountant that they go to or can go to for advice. But I think it's probably the case that 25% of small business have gone and seen a lawyer and got some advice about business, and have got a lawyer that they've got that perhaps understands their business, and they can go through for time to time for advice. But like, that leaves a very big percentage of businesses out there, like 75%. If 75% of small business in Australia do not have a lawyer that understands their business that they can go to from time to time, or scarily have never received legal advice, then that means that it's not the client's fault that they're doing this. It's there's two sides to this coin, and if law firms have scared businesses off from getting those services, have been really challenging to deal with, too hard, too costly. And we did a survey when we started the firm, and it was cost, communication, and care. There were the three things that kept coming up. When we were asking our group that were very honest and open with us about it, and initial clients, we wanted to get that feedback. Why would they not engage a lawyer and law firm? And it was scary and costly, and they communicated differently to them. They weren't speaking the same language, and they didn't feel like the lawyer actually cared about their business. So, like, if you're doing those three things better than the other firms, then you're going to win. You're going to win because you're going to be at least very, very competitive, because at least clients will be happy. Happier with the service and more likely to come back and get other services from you. So that's really been the driving force at least in the first 3 years for us to to really focus on those three areas. Focus on the top three issues, and go at those really hard, and walk the walk, not just talk. Like, there's a lot of firms that say that they're straight talking, or relationship driven, or care about their clients, but how do they do that? Like,
it's an interesting marketing dilemma. It's one of those things that I remember hearing this years ago, and I've said it to my clients as well over the years. It's like, how many people say that they're really excited? Well, don't say that you're excited. Demonstrate that you're excited.
Yeah.
It's easy to say things. I mean, how many
talk is cheap.
Yeah, how many websites do you see? Oh, we're the leading. Well, who nominated you as the leading? Like, under what premise are you the leading? Whatever it is that you're saying,
their mothers.
It's exactly, and I think that's there's some basic stuff for businesses to understand that you're doing there is saying, well, one hand is to find out what they want. The other hand is to actually talk to those things and deliver on those things as you're going through the process. And I think too often it happens in any business where what they're doing is they think they know what the audience wants. They've never really checked. They thrust things upon the audience that they want to sell and don't necessarily talk the language that they're talking. And so there's a disconnect. And I think that they're important lessons for business, regardless of what profession you're in.
Yeah. And listening to them, and what, finding more, it's more finding out, I guess, than listening, but listening is obviously very important. But there's lots of things that clients won't tell you. And we were shocked when we did this survey and found out, costs like bill shock, don't know what the WTF, hourly rates this much. Wow. What does that all mean? How much is that going to cost? Like, very, very, it was very nebulous sometimes. And then, bill shock would occur. And so obviously that was a big deal. Communication, not responding to phone calls or not getting back to them, even if it was just a quick, text message to say, hey, I got your missed call, I'll come back to you later, or an email came through, hey, I saw your email today, I've just been on an urgent matter, you're first on my list tomorrow morning, whatever that might be, so that at least the client's not going to bed going, did they get my email today? Like, we're moving in such a fast-paced environment. If I don't come back to a client, they've emailed them in the morning, and if I haven't come back to them by the afternoon, they think I've gone on a holiday. Yeah. Like, honestly, this is how fast it is. But the traditional law firm doesn't get that, and that means they will miss out on all this opportunity because they're not moving fast enough.
It is such an important thing, and I think the pace that we're moving at also means that ideas that you have today could be stolen tomorrow, because and not because they necessarily, and not necessarily because someone looked over your shoulder and said, oh, that's a good idea, I'm going to run with it, but more because that 24 hours can be enough time for someone new to come up with the same idea. And then
it's so funny as well too. There's people coming up with very, very similar ideas around the world at the same time, because the prior art base is kind of moving in that same direction, and it's easy to think, oh my god, this person's stolen my idea, but it's just literally that someone else has had. I mean, I'm sure many people have had the same ideas that I've had about stuff, but it's, whether they implement them or not is another thing. And in Australia, we've got a first to use, not necessarily a first to file system, for instance, with trademarks, but it's always better to be first anyway. And that can be a matter of who got into IP Australia first for the filing.
And that's an area I just wanted to explore briefly, if I can, because I think it's really important for small business, particularly in a day and age where AI is such a big factor. And the minute you start putting stuff out there and feeding it into an AI tool, it starts becoming free for all. And so there's kind of people that are jumping on that bandwagon, not being aware of it. Then there's the other side of things of people being too cautious to publish any kind of content anywhere because they think, oh, it's my intellectual property. How do you find that balance between what is your intellectual property and what you need to actually, what you can put out there? Where is that line?
I'm going to give you the most amazing legal answer. It depends. And unfortunately, it really does. It depends on what type of intellectual property it is. So, for instance, with a patent, with any sort of novel or new idea, process, how to do something that's a novel and inventive step from the prior art base. There's a number of things that you should be considering. And I know there's lots of people with lots of opinions. We all know what they say about opinions. They also, most of them stink, and unfortunately they're based on their own either bush lawyer, their own research, or what they've been told by another lawyer or patent attorney, which may have applied to their particular case, which was right, or it might be wrong advice, and then they spruik it on Facebook and give pseudo advice to these people. I've had to chime in a number of times on groups. I've almost given up, trying to keep battling that. But yeah, definitely getting advice. I've found generally in business, getting the right advice from the right people at the right time is super invaluable. So if you have, this idea about a patent, etc., don't go disclosing it to anyone. Get the advice first. Work out what legal documents you might need to put in place, first, and put out a roadmap of what you need to do at what particular time, and then for when you want to, publish and because the danger is once you put that out online, you can be deemed to be, that could then be deemed to be part of the prior art base. So then you undo yourself from your own patent application because you've publicised it for advertised it for sale, or when they look and they do look back in the Wayback Machine and look at and if they find this stuff, then you can come a cropper.
As I say, it's hard because everything that we come up with that's new is based on something else that we've seen or heard in circumstances, and inadvertently you can be copying some other ideas. Sometimes it is very obvious, let's turn the three whatevers into the three something else.
Yeah.
That's just a variation on a theme. You see a lot of that stuff being done and people developing other people's ideas. And sometimes people will openly say, well, it's based on the principles that I read in this book or that I heard from this person.
Yeah.
But are those adaptations, your own intellectual property, or they're things that if they're based on lots of other people's, that, you haven't got something fresh there?
We do a lot of intellectual property infringement and copyright, which you're alluding to there. I think copyright infringement as well, which is not, pardon the pun, black and white sometimes, or usually with the copyright infringement work that we do, it's pretty blatant when you see slabs of text copied. That's more clear cut than, say, for instance, a rewording of an idea or a piece of text. I'd strongly advise against just publishing text that's spat out through any of the AI producing content platforms. You just don't know where this is being produced from. You don't know, you don't know as well too what other people may be using it as well, and that becomes duplicate content that Google doesn't like. Sometimes the people are putting in the same sort of prompts and it's spitting out pretty much the same word for word. So if you're publishing that and someone else is publishing that, then Google's going to penalise you both for having duplicate content.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, not only do you have to make it your own, as you said, checking it is huge, because if you look and when you ask for a piece of content from
Yeah.
any one of the AIs, and they often give you reference materials, and it looks great because you see, look, oh, there's 20 references there, and you think, oh, that looks amazing, and you a quick look, and you think, oh, they seem like legitimate websites. Actually click and look at what those things are, because more often than not, they don't exist.
I think people, yeah,
They've just been completely made up.
yeah, it's just that they're hallucinating, these, and they're hallucinating case law references. There's been some lawyers that have been busted for producing submissions to the court, enough for the Supreme Court to put out a directive that, if any lawyer's caught doing this, like they're gonna suffer great consequences. Like quoting cases that don't exist. At the moment, AI is just not there yet. And I've even had clients, giving me wordings for contracts and all sorts of stuff using AI, and I had to sort of politely say to them, "Nice try. It was good. It was a good try, but it's not. It's still not going to do what it needs to do. So it's not there yet. I suspect it'll be. It's not going to be far off producing something that might be 80%, 90% there. But still, I think there's going to be, someone with a legal eye to check this stuff. But yeah, coming back to your point, the substantial reproduction of copyright material. I think we're living in a day and age now where it appears some people do not have an original thought in their head. And I generally sort of say, like, if you're going to produce content based on other content, like really, really make it your own. Like, of course, we all draw some inspiration from what we see out there, but really make it your own and make your content unique to you, and with your own language, and really get as far away from that red line as you possibly can. Just like with your taxes, don't push the envelope with what you can claim and not. Like, take the advice from your accountant and stay away from the red line as much as you can. It's just not worth taking those risks.
No, absolutely. I 100% agree with you, and I think there's so many avenues to explore in all of this, particularly around those areas of just IP and trademarking, and I think it's 100% worthwhile for people having a discussion with someone like yourself. And I should point out, of course, that we'll include all the details on how to get in contact with you in the show notes. And I know we could talk for many, many hours about all of these different areas, and I appreciate all the insights you've given me. I did want to just wrap things up with a question I like to ask all of my guests.
Yeah, go for it.
Which is, what is the aha moment that commonly business owners have when they come to work with you that you wish more people would know about in advance? And I suspect we've kind of talked around this a little bit in this discussion already.
Yeah, I think was a few aha moments, but I think people generally learn from their own experience, right? And I often know that and say to clients that there's some things that you only do once, and not having an employment contract with an employee, that's a mistake you only make once, because you know the ramifications of it by going through it. Not having a shareholders agreement, I've got people that come to me and say, hey, we need a shareholders agreement. And this is, and when I get talking to them, I find out, the first thing that they're doing is that because they've had a business bust up previously where there was no shareholders agreement, and they know that, like, the only avenue to go and have that fight is the Supreme Court, and unless it's over $500,000 to $1 million, and it's not, then it may not be worth it. Like, so there's definitely some of these potholes and learning experiences that clients have to go through, and we all learn through those experiences, and no one's not guilty of it. Like, we're all guilty of it, and I just I know that when clients say to us, "Oh, I wish I met you," I wish I met you 5 years ago. They're the magic words for us, because we know at least that they've they understand the value of this work in asset protection and protection of their business, their brand, their livelihood. Protecting this stuff and that stitch in time saves 9 or 900, 9,000, or the whole bag. Taking these these initial steps, which it's not getting at least some protection is some protection is better than none, and just doing things in order of priority and just making sure that at least the big risk stuff is dealt with, and then at least your eyes are wide open to, okay, these are the areas, these are the things that we're going to need to tie up, and we'll do that when we have this funding or this, and just set out a roadmap for it. So I think that that sort of aha moment comes from the clients when they realise, and it's great that, I don't need to go to another service provider to explain this or be referred from someone else, and then I have that getting to know you conversation again. You want to, ideally, I think that, and that's the way we've sort of tried to create the firm, is have that, so that you can have that almost like an in-house counsel to be able to go to for this, for what they need for their business from time to time, and then at least triage and work out what to do from there.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's absolutely the message, and I think that's such an important aspect of what we've talked about today. And I think thought leaders that are out there and are listening, or people that are wanting to be thought leaders, in order to put yourself out there, you need the protection, but you also need to understand where you stand and where you can go. And I think having a firm that is progressive by name and by nature in the way that you go about it and deal with small business, I think is a huge value add. So thank you so much for being a part of the program. I really appreciate all of the insights that you've given us.
Yeah, hopefully the audience has got a little bit out of it. And there's obviously lots more to talk about. And next time on the show, I'll do all sorts of potholes and things to avoid, and things that I've noticed over the last 10 years advising all these businesses. What are the main things that businesses come across with, and where they should focus their attention.
Absolutely, and definitely look forward to all of that. And of course, we will include all of the details of how to get in contact with you in the show notes, including a link to a checklist for people around intellectual property that we can also give people as a starting point. So I think that's great. So thank you for giving us that as well.
Yeah, no problem. It's a comprehensive sort of list that small business can go through and work out all the areas of intellectual property that they have and create effectively an inventory of it. Make sure it's in the right, make sure it's in the right place, and if it isn't already, what needs to be done in terms of transfer, and just because it's all very nebulous and it's not something that you sort of check every day, and you start to amass a lot of intellectual property very quickly in a business that you don't realise. We worked out there wasn't a checklist out there that existed, so we decided to create our own. So it's been 2 years sort of in the making, but it's all for Australian small business. So feel free to download from the link.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for being a great guest.
Appreciate it.
Advice for Thought Leaders, and to everyone listening in, of course, check out the show notes, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to Biz Bites. We hope you enjoyed the program. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Biz Bites is proudly brought to you by Podcasts Done For You, the service where we will deliver a podcast for you and expose your brilliance to the world. Contact us today for more information. Details in the show notes. We look forward to your company next time on Biz Bites.